Since d has this coefficient of 2, we're going to start by rewriting 2x squared minus 3x plus space equals, we add the 4 to the other side plus a space. And then what we need to do is we need to factor the 2 out of these terms. So what we're left with then, 2x squared over 2 is x squared. We're going to leave this in fraction form because it's going to be the easiest way to take the half and to square. So this is minus 3 halves x plus some number that we don't know yet. So this is the trinomial that we're going to be completing the square for. So then we have 2, and then our binomial squared equals some number we don't know yet. All right. When you take half of a fraction, you're really just multiplying the denominator by 2. So what becomes for the half here is x minus 3/4. Okay? So we took half of it, and then to go back into this trinomial, we need to square it. When you square a fraction, you're going to square the top and the bottom. So this becomes 9 over 16. Okay? But even though this is our trinomial, the trinomial we started with has this leading coefficient of 2, so we need to distribute. So here's our 2x squared, here's our negative 3x. When you multiply a fraction, the 2 and the 16 will cancel, so that we're left with 9 over 8. So we're really adding 9/8 to both sides. So we add 9/8 here. We add 9/8 here. Now what's helpful to remember is that 4, to add that to 9/8, 4 equals 32 over 8. Okay? So when we add these two together, we're really adding 32 plus 9, and 32 plus 9 is 41. All right? Before we take the square root of both sides, it's going to be helpful to remove this coefficient of our binomial squared term. And again, when you divide a fraction by 2, you're really just multiplying the denominator. So this becomes 41 over 16. And now we can go ahead and take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root of the binomial squared, we're left with x minus 3/4. And when we take the square root of 41 over 16, we have the square root of 41, but the square root of 16 is just 4. So then the final step would just be to add 3/4 to both sides. So then we're left with x equals 3/4 plus or minus root 41 over 4. Okay, any questions? All right, so let's go ahead and go on to E. For E, it's already set up nicely for us. So we have x squared plus 10x plus space equals negative 9 plus a space. The leading coefficient is 1, so I can go ahead and already jump to taking half the middle term and squaring it. Half of positive 10 is a positive 5. 5 squared is 25, so we're adding that to both sides. Then negative 9 plus 25 is 16. So then when we take the square root of both sides, we're left with x plus 5 on the left-hand side equals the square root of 16 is 4, but we have to add that plus or minus. And then it's always helpful when you get an equation with like terms, it is helpful to split that into 2 equations. So x plus 5 equals 4, x plus 5 equals negative 4, and then x equals negative 1, and x equals negative 9. And then example F. This is some good practice with working with fractions again. You could, just so you know, you could, for example, multiply everything by 16 to remove fractions, but in the process of completing the square, you would end up dividing again, because then you would have a leading coefficient. So it actually doesn't really help you in this situation to eliminate the denominators here. So to complete the square, we have x squared minus 1/2 x plus a space equals, when we move this 3/16 to the other side, it is now positive 3/16 plus a space. All right, so you need to remember, when you take half of a fraction, you're really just doubling the denominator. So this becomes x, and since this is a minus 1/2 x, you're going to have minus 1/4. So that's half the middle term. When we square it, you square the top and the bottom. So this on top, 1 squared is 1, 4 squared is 16, and we're going to go ahead and add that to both sides. So then this equals 4/16. All right, but 4/16, if you reduce that, is really just 1/4. Okay, then we can take the square root of both sides. When we take the square root of the binomial squared, we're just left with x minus 1/4. When we take the square root of 1/4, you're going to take the square root of the top and the bottom. The square root of 1 is just 1. Square root of 4 is 2, but we have plus and minus. And then you can split this up into two pieces here. We have x minus 1/4 equals, what I'm going to do is change this 1/2 so it has a common denominator. All right, so instead of 1/2, I'm going to put positive 2/4. And then this is going to be x minus 1/4 equals negative 2/4. And the convenience of that is now we have a common denominator, so we can just add 1/4 in our heads. So x equals, if you add 1/4 to 2/4, you get 3/4. And here, negative 2/4 plus 1/4 is going to be negative 1/4.